The one thing Donald Trump feared most has just happened. Ghislaine Maxwell, from behind bars, has implicated him in ways that cannot be ignored. And the evidence emerging from newly released documents paints a picture far darker than many imagined. This isn't about speculation anymore. This is about documented flight logs, witness testimony, and internal government emails that reveal a relationship so intertwined with criminal activity that the Department of Justice itself is scrambling to control the narrative. The question everyone is asking now is simple: what exactly did Trump and Maxwell do together? And why is the government working so hard to keep us from finding out? Maxwell currently resides in what can only be described as a luxury prison facility, one that offers privileges most inmates could never dream of. Food delivery services, yoga classes, even a therapy dog. For someone convicted of sex trafficking minors, this treatment raises serious questions. And according to investigative reports, the reason for this preferential treatment may be directly connected to her silence about Donald Trump, but silence can only go so far. Because despite the efforts to bury the truth, documents continue to surface. And what they reveal is a connection between Trump, Epstein, and Maxwell that goes far beyond casual acquaintance. We're talking about private flights together, parties with underage girls, and allegations that have never been fully investigated. Until now, before we dive deeper into these explosive revelations, it's crucial to understand the context. Because what's emerging isn't just about one man or one crime. It's about a network, a system of abuse that was protected at the highest levels of power. And Donald Trump was allegedly at the center of it.
The Times reports Mr. Epstein was a frequent guest at Mar-a-Lago parties. A woman who said Mr. Epstein trafficked her in the late 1990s and early 2000s recalled attending at least a half a dozen of the parties, beginning when she was 17. She told the New York Times that the invitations she received when she was 17 were, quote, to be Donald Trump's guest at Mar-a-Lago. According to one invitation she shared with the Times, the parties were open bar and no one checked IDs. She said Mr. Trump was always all over them, she recalled. A 20-year-old model who attended a Trump party at Mar-a-Lago told the New York Times, I had a glass of champagne and I immediately felt not well, Ms. Brock recalled, adding, I thought my drink had been spiked. According to the New York Times reporting, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein attended parties at each other's homes. The Times reports one of the women, who has never before spoken publicly about the experience, told the Times that Mr. Epstein had coerced her into attending 4 parties at Mr. Epstein's home. Mr. Trump attended all 4, the woman said. At 2 of them, she said, Mr. Epstein directed her to have sex with other male guests. In an email among those released by Congress in November, Mr. Epstein boasted that he gave Mr. Trump a 20-year-old woman whom Mr. Epstein dated in the 1990s. In a 2010 deposition, Mr. Epstein was asked if he had ever socialized with Mr. Trump with girls under 18, and he did more than 3 dozen times during the deposition. Mr. Epstein invoked his constitutional right not to answer. At one of those parties, here's how Jeffrey Epstein introduced himself. Quote, I'm Jeffrey. I'm Don's best friend. That's how Jeffrey Epstein introduced himself to a beauty pageant contestant at one of Donald Trump's hotels. That contestant, Beatrice Kuhl, told the New York Times, quote, one of Mr. Trump's employees asked her to meet privately with him in a suite upstairs. Almost as soon as she arrived, Ms. Kuhl said, Mr. Trump began groping her, kissing her, and trying to lift her dress. I yelled, I screamed, I pushed him, she said. He didn't want to give up. She said she was withholding some details of what happened because she had been subject to anonymous threats. Ms. Kuhl also provided the Times with pictures of documents corroborating her participation in the pageant and of herself with Mr. Trump. So that is a case of sexual assault by Donald Trump that has not previously been reported, that was reported there by the New York Times and not denied by Donald Trump when given an opportunity by the New York Times. Donald Trump has not been charged with anything connected with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Marina Lacerda spoke publicly for the first time outside of the Capitol on September.
That testimony is absolutely chilling. And it's not an isolated incident. Multiple women have now come forward describing similar experiences, parties at Mar-a-Lago, encounters orchestrated by Epstein, and situations where they felt endangered by Trump himself. One woman even reported that her drink may have been spiked at a Trump party. Another testified that Epstein personally directed her to engage in sexual acts with other men at parties Trump attended, and here's what makes this even more disturbing. When Epstein was asked under oath in a 2010 deposition whether he had ever socialized with Trump in the presence of girls under 18, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right, not once, but more than 36 times during that same deposition. That's not the response of someone with nothing to hide. Now, let's talk about what just came to light. Internal Department of Justice emails that were never meant to see the light of day, have confirmed that Donald Trump flew on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet at least 8 times between 1993 and 1996. And he wasn't alone. Ghislaine Maxwell was on those flights. So were women described in official documents as possible witnesses in a Maxwell case. Think about that for a moment. Trump, Maxwell, and women who could potentially testify about Maxwell's crimes, all together on Epstein's plane. This directly contradicts Maxwell's previous sworn testimony, where she claimed Trump was never around Epstein's victims, that he was a perfect gentleman, who never even entered certain areas of Epstein's properties, but the flight logs don't lie. The documentation is clear. Trump was there. Maxwell was there. And so were potential victims, and this raises a question that demands an answer. What role did Trump play in Maxwell's operation? Because let's be absolutely clear about something, Ghislaine Maxwell is not just an accomplice or a facilitator. She is a convicted sex trafficker. She was not simply managing schedules or organizing events. She herself committed violent crimes against minors. And Donald Trump was traveling with her, allegedly in the presence of her victims. So what does that mean? Was Trump aware of what Maxwell was doing? Was he complicit? Or, as some evidence suggests, was he actively participating? These are not rhetorical questions. These are legitimate investigative inquiries that deserve answers, and yet, instead of transparency, what we're getting from the current Department of Justice is obstruction. Just this morning, the DOJ issued a statement, an official government statement, attempting to preemptively discredit any information about Trump that might emerge from the Epstein files. They claimed, without evidence, that anything connecting Trump to Epstein's crimes is fabricated. This is unprecedented. The Department of Justice does not typically issue public statements defending sitting presidents from allegations before those allegations are even fully disclosed. But here we are. And the desperation is palpable.
The week begins with a cover-up, specifically an illegal cover-up. We are discussing and reporting, of course, the Trump DOJ's minimal and often redacted release of the Epstein files. They have violated the law, and this is a time where it is important to speak clearly with one voice about what we know. That doesn't mean screaming opinions from the rafters about every politician. It does mean telling you what's actually happening. Your government is hiding this sex trafficker's files after both claiming to release them, claiming that was the plan, then signing a law with a deadline to release them, and now, as of Friday, breaking that law. This is bringing on major heat, warnings from lawmakers, including some Republicans, threats about what they will do with their lawful power to make the government of Donald Trump follow the law. That's been an issue in more than one category this year, more than one department, but this is a big one. Tonight, we will also break down some of what we learned from Friday's release, because as I've told you, on the one hand, there's a huge cover-up. On the other hand, there has been progress. This push and what the survivors demanded has at least led to some selective disclosures. And so we will show you some of what matters about that later. While the top story, the most substantive, important thing going on here, is your government's cover-up. Today, top Senate Democrat Schumer says they are looking to take legal action immediately to address what the DOJ is doing. 2 House lawmakers who wrote this legislation say the DOJ must release all the files or they will hold the Attorney General in contempt.
There are several ways to get at this. Some take longer, some are shorter. The quickest way, and I think the most expeditious way to get justice for these victims is to bring inherent contempt against Pam Bondi. And that doesn't require going through the courts. And give her, and basically Ro Khanna and I are talking about and drafting that right now.
We only need the House for inherent contempt, and we're building a bipartisan coalition, and it would fine Pam Bondi for every day that she's not releasing these documents.
That's a Republican and a Democrat explaining one way to try to force the compliance that DOJ is currently refusing.
Contempt charges. Bipartisan coalition. These are not empty threats. Lawmakers from both parties are now publicly stating that the Department of Justice has broken the law. And they're prepared to hold Attorney General Pam Bondi personally accountable. As of late December 2025, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has announced that Democrats are exploring immediate legal action to force full disclosure of the Epstein files. Meanwhile, Republican and Democratic House members are drafting inherent contempt resolutions that would fine Bondi for every day she continues to withhold documents that are legally required to be released. This is a rare moment of bipartisan agreement on an issue that transcends party politics. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about Democrats versus Republicans. This is about accountability. This is about justice for survivors who have waited decades for the truth to come out, and that truth is becoming increasingly difficult to suppress. Every day brings new revelations. Every week, another document surfaces. And with each piece of evidence, the case against Trump, and against those who enabled him, grows stronger. The survivors of Epstein and Maxwell's abuse are watching all of this unfold. They're seeing their abusers live comfortable lives while they continue to deal with the trauma of what was done to them. They're watching as the government claims to care about justice while simultaneously hiding the very evidence that could deliver it. Their anger is justified. Their frustration is understandable. And their demands for full transparency should be supported by every person who believes in the rule of law, because if we allow this cover-up to succeed, if we let powerful people bury evidence of their crimes simply because they have the means to do so, then we're saying that justice is only for those who can't afford to avoid it. And that's not the system any of us should accept. So what happens next? That depends on sustained pressure. It depends on continued investigation. And it depends on people refusing to let this story fade from public consciousness. The next few months will be critical. Congress has the power to hold DOJ officials in contempt. Survivors have the right to sue for full disclosure. And the American people have the authority to demand that their government follow the law it passed. This fight is far from over. In fact, in many ways, it's just beginning. Because the more we learn, the clearer it becomes, the truth about Trump, Epstein, and Maxwell has been hidden for far too long. And it's time for that to change.